Every locomotive out on the rails carries a number, and that number is not just paint on metal. It is identity, memory, and purpose, all rolled into one. And the story behind it is one most people have never stopped to think about. To really understand why locomotive numbers matter, you need to go back to a time when railways were young, loud, and growing faster than anyone had properly planned for. In those early days, locomotives did not have numbers at all. They had names, real, proud, sometimes dramatic names, pulled from mythology, from nature, from the sheer ambition of the men who designed and built them. Engines like Rocket, Locomotion, and Puffing Billy rolled out of the workshops, carrying names that gave them character and personality. And honestly, for a while, that worked just fine. When you only have a handful of engines running on a short stretch of track, everyone at the depot knows each machine personally. The driver knows his engine. The maintenance crew knows its quirks. The station master can tell you exactly which locomotive is due in next and what mood it tends to be in. But railways did not stay small, and they did not stay simple. As the 19th century pushed forward, rail networks began spreading across entire countries, then across continents. New locomotives were being ordered by the dozen, then by the hundred, and suddenly, trying to run a railway by remembering the names of individual engines became completely unworkable. You simply cannot ask a traffic controller to keep track of which named engine needs its boiler checked on Thursday, which one is running the Northern Freight today, and which one is sitting in the workshop with a cracked axle. Not when you have hundreds of machines moving at the same time across thousands of miles of track. The human brain was not built for that kind of unstructured load. Numbers stepped in and solved the problem in the most straightforward way imaginable. When a railway gives a locomotive a number, it is doing something that looks small on the surface but is actually quite significant underneath. It is not just labeling a machine. It is plugging that machine into a system, a whole living framework that connects every department of the railway into something that can actually function together. The traffic office knows the number. The repair shop knows the number. The record books know the number. A junior worker on his first week at the depot and a senior engineer with 30 years of experience are both working from the same reference point. One number, and suddenly everyone is speaking the same language. That kind of shared language is not a luxury on a working railway. It is the thing that keeps the whole operation from falling apart at the seams. Think about what a large railway is actually managing on any given day. Hundreds of locomotives scattered across a network, some pulling passenger expresses at high speed, some grinding through mountain gradients with heavy freight, some sitting in depots waiting for their next turn of duty, some stripped down in workshops with their parts laid out on the floor. The people responsible for that network need to know, at any moment, exactly where each engine is, what condition it is in, and what it is capable of doing next. A numbering system makes that possible. Without one, you are not running a railway. You are just hoping for the best. There is something else that locomotive numbers do, something that people in the industry feel but do not always put into words. They create accountability. Once an engine has a number, that number can be written down at every point in its journey. It can be logged when it passes through a station, checked in when it arrives at a yard, booked into the workshop when it needs attention. And if something goes wrong, a delay, an incident, a mechanical failure that should have been caught earlier, the investigation starts right there with that number. Every movement the engine made, every maintenance job carried out on it, every defect reported against it, it all sits on record, filed under that number, traceable by anyone who needs to look. Nobody can quietly put a poorly maintained locomotive back into service without the paperwork showing it. The number makes that kind of corner cutting much harder to hide, and this matters most when it comes to safety. The railway accidents of the 19th and early 20th centuries, some of them genuinely terrible, taught the industry hard lessons about what happens when you cannot answer basic questions after something goes wrong. When had the boiler last been inspected? Had that defect in the brake system actually been fixed or just noted and left? Was this locomotive even supposed to be on this route today? Without a proper numbering system tying each engine to its complete history, these questions sometimes could not be answered at all. With one, they could always be answered. The number became as much a safety instrument as anything mechanical on the engine itself. The way different railways built their numbering systems is a genuinely interesting piece of industrial history, because the choices they made reveal a lot about how they thought about their own operations. Some railways kept it simple, sequential numbers, starting at 1 and counting upward as new engines came into service. Clean, logical, and easy to teach to new staff. Others grouped engines by class, so that locomotives sharing the same design and mechanical specifications sat in the same numerical range. This was not just tidiness for its own sake. It meant that a maintenance engineer looking at a repair order could tell from the number alone what type of engine he was dealing with, what components he would need, and what the known issues with that design tended to be. The number was doing a job before a single sentence was spoken. Some railways went further and encoded the engine's purpose directly into its number. Passenger locomotives in one range, freight engines in another, shunting engines in a third. A dispatcher could look at a number and immediately know whether that engine was suited for the job at hand. That kind of built-in information speeds up decision-making and reduces the chance of sending the wrong locomotive to do work. It was never designed for a mistake that could cost time, money, or worse. On the very largest railway networks, numbering systems grew into something genuinely sophisticated. When India's railways were brought under national management, the numbering code that emerged was effectively a compressed technical language. The number told you the engine's power classification, its wheel arrangement, and the region it was assigned to. Someone who knew how to read it could look at a locomotive number and understand in a moment what would otherwise take a paragraph to explain in words. These were not arbitrary digits assigned at random. They were information, carefully structured and deliberately designed to be read quickly by people who needed answers fast. One of the clearest illustrations of why numbers matter so deeply comes from the world of heritage, preservation, and railway history. The people who restore and maintain historic locomotives, the enthusiasts, the museum curators, the historians who have spent lifetimes documenting the railway, have always organized their knowledge around numbers. When a preserved engine is restored and put on display, the number it carries is not decoration. It is a statement of identity. It says, this specific machine, with this specific history, ran on this specific line during this specific period. That number is what connects the physical locomotive in front of you to everything held in the archives. The photographs, the service records, the official documents, the first-hand accounts from the people who worked with it. Take the number away, and you have an impressive piece of old machinery. Keep it, and you have a witness to history. This is why restorers take the correct application of numbers so seriously. Getting the number wrong or applying it in the wrong style, or using a font that was never used on that class of engine, these are not considered minor issues by the people doing that work. The number done right is part of the authenticity of the machine. It is part of what the locomotive is saying about itself and where it came from. Heritage enthusiasts can tell you not just what a correct number looks like on a given engine, but who specified that style when it was introduced, and what it communicated to the workforce that operated it every day. Modern railways have taken all of this tradition and carried it forward into the digital age, and the number remains at the center of everything. Today, a locomotive number is not just painted on the cab side. It is linked to GPS tracking systems that report the engine's position in real time. It is tied to onboard diagnostic systems that log faults automatically as they develop. It connects to maintenance management software that schedules inspections, tracks component lifespans, and flags when an engine is approaching a service milestone. When a driver takes charge of a locomotive at the start of a shift, the handover is recorded against the number. When the engine completes a journey, the mileage is added to its running total under the number. Every piece of data the railway generates about that machine across its entire working life, which might span several decades, is organized around that one identifier. The number is the thread that holds the whole story together. But beyond all of the administration and data management, there is a human side to locomotive numbers that deserves to be spoken about honestly. For the people who work with locomotives, the drivers, the firemen of the steam era, the depot fitters, and supervisors, the people who spend their working lives around these machines, numbers acquire a personal weight that goes well beyond their official function. Drivers form real attachments to specific engines. They know which ones run sweetly and which ones fight you every mile. They know the ones with a soft throttle response and the ones that slip on wet rails before you have even opened up, and they carry all of that knowledge by number. Ask a retired driver about the engines that stayed with them through their career, and they will give you numbers without hesitation. Not descriptions, numbers. Because that is how the memory was formed, and that is how the relationship was lived. This is why renumbering programs carried out for perfectly sensible administrative reasons have sometimes met with genuine resistance from railway workers. To an outsider, changing a number seems like a paperwork inconvenience. To someone who has worked alongside a particular machine for years, it feels like something more personal than that. The number was not just a label. It was the name by which a working relationship was conducted day after day, year after year. Locomotive numbers also matter enormously in public communication and in the official record. Timetables reference them. Incident reports are built around them. When a serious accident is investigated and the findings are published, the numbers of every locomotive involved sit at the center of the narrative. When a railway retires a famous engine or celebrates a historic journey, the number is always part of the announcement, because the number is what the industry, the media, and the public use to identify and remember that specific machine. In freight operations, where a single locomotive might pass through several different railway networks on a single run, the number becomes the one reliable constant. At every handover point, every operator knows exactly which machine they are receiving, what condition it was reported in when it left the previous network, and what their own responsibilities now are. Without a clear, recognized number, those handovers become exercises in confusion, delay, and disputed liability. The story of locomotive numbers is really the story of how human beings learned to manage extraordinary complexity across enormous distances, and how they built the tools to do it before those tools had ever existed anywhere else. The railways were the first truly industrial-scale operation in history, and they had to invent systems of organization from scratch. The locomotive numbering system was one of those inventions, simple in concept, powerful in application, and so fundamentally well-designed that it has never needed to be replaced, only refined, expanded, and connected to whatever new technology each generation brought with it. The principle has not changed since the first railway clerk wrote a number against an engine name in a depot ledger more than a century and a half ago. Every locomotive needs an identity that every part of the system can read, record, and trust. A number does all of that, quietly and reliably, every single day. A locomotive number is never just a number. It is a record of every mile run, every repair made, and every person who ever took responsibility for that machine. It is the quiet backbone of one of the most complex industries ever built by human hands. The next time you stand on a platform and watch an engine roll through, take a second to look at those digits on the side. You are not looking at a label. You are looking at a story.